and welcome to another review from Colour with Claire. Today I'm reviewing the Fairies colouring book from Karron, who is a Canadian illustrator and painter. These aren't her first colouring books, and she also does lots of other printable art to colour on her Etsy page. So if you want to check out all of her previous work, I'll put the link in the description. But these are her newest release, and as you can see, it's exactly the same book, but there are two versions. So we have the line art version and the Grayscale. Again, it's colourist preference really, which one you like best. Some people prefer to have the clean, crisp line art, and some people prefer to have that pre-shaded look. So we'll go through both the books and you can make your mind up. So we open up and we have our contents page. Now obviously with this being called Fairies, every single illustration in the book is going to be of a fairy, and they all have names which you can find here. There's then a bonus 4 pages in the back, which aren't fairies, but they are from previous work by Christine, just for you to get a little flavour of the other things that she likes to illustrate. So we open the page onto the first illustration, and as you can see, this is a very close-up portrait of a little girl fairy, and this is very much the essence of what this book is about. So we're having close-up portraits with lots of different fairies. Obviously they all have themes, so you could see in the contents at the front of the book, for instance, this one is the Kaya Lily Fairy, and they're all named down here as well at the bottom. So this is the Rowan Tree Fairy. This is the one that I've coloured, which is the Water Lily Fairy, and these leaves in her hand were supposed to be water lily leaves, but I thought they looked so much like flames that I would colour them like that and sort of flip the illustration on its head. And I now have called this the Water Fairy Who Discovers Fire. I just thought that was a nice kind of fire and water elemental play on the picture. I used polychromos to colour this, and I did the face and the skin on camera on a live stream, so if you want to see that you can check out my previous live streams. This is the Forget-Me-Not Fairy. Then we have some male fairies as well. This one is the River Fairy. So it's not often in these kind of portrait books of people that we find males. It's often very centred on the female, but we do have male fairies in this as well. This is the Blueberry Fairy, the Daisy Fairy, and if you'll notice, every single one of these illustrations does have a different border around it. So it's contained in the centre of the page, so you don't go into the spine or off the edge or anything like that. This one's the Butterfly Fairy. This would be really interesting to try and colour the dreadlocks on this fairy. I've not really seen many ladies in colouring books with dreadlocks, so that'd be interesting to colour. This is the Bleeding Hearts Fairy. So aside from, you know, skin and hair, you've got a lot of things like wings that you could learn to colour in this book. Something that I'm not very good at, if you saw on this, the hand is just horrendous. I'm not very good at colouring hands, so this is going to be a challenge for me to try and get better at colouring hands. Here we have the Fern Fairy, the Lily of the Valley Fairy, the Dandelion Fairy. Really like this one. I think this is the cover art as well, isn't it? Yeah, there we go. The Birdsong Fairy, the Cattail Fairy, and the Oaktree Fairy, another Guy Fairy. So we've got some more kind of males as well. Really, really good that she's included males. As I say, I'm not really used to colouring them, but I think it'll be interesting to keep going with that and getting the different structure of the faces and the jaw, you know, because obviously men's faces are quite different to women's faces, places that are shadowed and things like that. So interesting to get colouring at the male form. This is a Snow Fairy, so very much a Christmas scene. She's sat on top of a reindeer and she's putting snowflakes out onto the branches of the tree. This is the Northwind Fairy. Again, you could make this into a wintry one. There's lots of sort of naked trees and things, so it does look like a winter scene. Now we're coming on to those 4 images at the back, the bonus images that aren't anything to do with fairies. This is the Dancing Mouse Couple. Very, very sweet. If you're wondering how to do cobblestone, I do have a tutorial for that on my YouTube channel. Go and check it out. We've got Mother Goose, very fun, whimsical Mother Goose there, trying to put her washing out and collect her fruit, and she's got all the kids running around. We have Robin Christmas, this pair of robins here with all the ivy, holly, all that. Well, it's holly, isn't it? And this again looks like a water lily, but I could be wrong. Again, we have the Dandelion Fairy illustration, which I showed you earlier, but this one is the Grayscale version. So it's a bit of a bonus in the line art book for you to just try a bit of Grayscale if you've not tried it before. And then we have just a little bit of promo of Christine's other books and where you can find her online. And that is the end of the book. On the back you can see there's thumbnails of all the different girls and boys on there, and yeah, so 24 illustrations in the book in total. Now we're going to move on to the Grayscale colouring book, which is obviously exactly the same book with exactly the same fairies in them, but different bonus pages. So check this out. What I might do is put a side by side so that you can see the line art and the Grayscale at the same time. So there we go, that's the Dragonfly Fairy. We've got the Pine Tree Fairy. So I'm not really big into colouring Grayscale. It's difficult for me because it often leaves my images looking really muddy for some reason. I can't seem to get it right. I'm not sort of good at doing Grayscale. It's not something I'm strong in. But I know a lot of people really appreciate these scenes and these illustrations that have the pre-shading there ready for you to do your highlights and your shadows, and you know, just it's a little bit easier for a lot of colourists that way. As you can see here, I did try on that live stream to colour the face exactly the same way as I did on the line art version in the Grayscale to see how it worked out. It's pretty nice, but again, for my taste, there's just too much darkness on there really. I do prefer to have the line art so I can decide where all the shadows and things need to sit. This is that Forget-Me-Not Fairy. Now I will say though that the Grayscale artwork does look a lot more finished. It looks nicer, I think, than the actual line art, the blank line art. You know, I love how there's a lot of definition and things like that. It's just not, for me, that's not my preference for colouring. It's my preference for looking at, but not my preference for colouring. So this is the Blueberry Fairy. And we then have the Daisy Fairy. Now a little bit about this paper. So if we look at the back here, you can see this little message right at the bottom, made in the USA, Lexington, Kentucky, and you will find that little message on all of the Amazon Create Space published books. So yes, this is an Amazon published book. The paper is okay. It's not the worst, and it's certainly not the best, but it takes pencils and markers and a lot of things that you can throw at it perfectly fine. If you're using very wet media, like particularly wet markers or paints, you can expect, of course, some buckling. But I think that Amazon Create Space paper isn't nearly as bad as a lot of people make out. And maybe even in the past I've thought that myself, but since I've coloured on a lot more Create Space books, I've certainly come to appreciate the paper a little bit more. It's not brilliant, obviously, but it certainly isn't as bad as a lot of people make out. So this is the Lily of the Valley Fairy that I couldn't say last time. And we have that Dandelion Fairy. The Birdsong Fairy, and they look so different, don't they, when you're looking at them side by side. The Cattail Fairy. See, one thing you could do if you do get both of the books but you prefer line art is just get this book just to try and show you where, you know, bits of shadow and highlight can go. If you're not adept at that, that's quite a good reason to get both the books, actually. This is the Oaktree Fairy. Again, as I say, sort of different shadows here and there, very strong jaw shadows on your male form. We have the Snow Fairy. The Northwind Fairy, which looks completely different. Absolutely, the face is just totally different. And then the Northwind 2 Fairy. So, actually, now I'm looking at it, this Northwind 2 Fairy looks to be the one that is actually done in the line art book. And this is a different Northwind Fairy. So that's interesting. So we're moving on then to those extra pages. This is the bonus Mermaid Dreaming page. Absolutely stunning with all the little scales on her face and the crown. This is so funny. It reminds me so much of my little sister. She's 7 years old, but she's going on 17. This is Bad Hair Day. A lot of darkness around here, so not a lot of scope for colouring that hair. Angel Memory. This is really sweet. So it's an angel with all of her little pets that have gone over the rainbow bridge. And again, we've got that little bit of promotion at the back. So all the different thumbnails on the back there for you. And there are the fronts. So obviously they do have two different front covers. This one with the Dandelion Fairy is the line art, and this one here is the Grayscale colouring book. So how much do they cost? Well, if you buy them from Amazon, hard copies like this, printed out and sent to your home, you're looking at around £11 or $13 in the USA. If you want to buy the PDF and print them out yourself on much better paper, you're welcome to do that. And it's around about £8 on Christine's Etsy page. So I hope that you've enjoyed looking through these books. Do let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to click the thumbs up, please, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon on Colour with Claire.